Hello everybody, and welcome to the very first edition of Edpuzzle Lecture on Human Biology, Chapter 1. In this Chapter 1 unit, we're going to briefly go over, you're going to learn about the 11 body systems that help keep your body in what's called homeostasis. Now, homeostasis just basically means a balance. Your body likes to be in balance. It likes its temperature to be balanced, pH level in your blood, and so on, glucose levels. It likes to be in balance. Well, whenever that gets out of balance, it gets out of homeostasis, and your body has ways to put it back in balance. And you're also going to need to know terms needed to find your way around the human body. Now, like on a map, if you look at a map, you have like north, south, east, and west. But in the body, we don't use compass signals like that. There's a lot of different terms that are going to let you find out how to move around the body and know what you're talking about. Okay, so human biology. What did you guys actually sign up for last year when you decided to take this class? Well, you decided to learn about anatomy and physiology. Now, what does that mean? Anatomy is basically just all the structures in the body. The study of the structures and their relationships with other structures. Physiology is what job, what role do those structures play in the body? Now, for example, throughout this year, you should be able to find and identify the pancreas in your body on a chart. All right, so you can identify it. That's the anatomy. What type of cells is the pancreas made of? Made of various cells. You got alpha cells, beta cells. But more importantly, in my opinion, what does the pancreas do for you? Why is it important? What function does it play in your body? And that would be its physiology. So anatomy is just looking at the basic structures and the cells that make it up, where the physiology is what role does it play in the body. Now the levels of organization of the body's systems. If you took biology again, you kind of remember we went over this, been 2 or 3 years ago, depending on what grade you are. But the very smallest level will be the chemical level, and that's where you're talking about atoms, the smallest units that participate in chemical reactions. Next, when you get 2 or more atoms bonded together, you get what's called a molecule. So, for example, DNA that's in your body, or hemoglobin, which helps you transport oxygen around the body, vitamins, proteins, etc. Okay, a lot of these molecules put together can form cells, and that would be the cellular level. That's the basic structure and function of any organism, no matter from bacteria to a blue whale to humans, doesn't matter. Cells, the cellular level, is the basic structure and function of an organism. Now, obviously, we're getting larger here. Groups of similar cells that perform a similar function, that's called a tissue. So like epithelial lining tissue or nervous tissue, muscular tissue. Those are all different types of tissue that form different functions in your body. Now, large amounts of these tissues can form what's called an organ. So it's groups of different tissues performing a similar function. Like we all know the heart. Its physiology is to pump blood around the body. The lungs. That's where the gas exchange occurs. CO2 goes out, oxygen comes in. Stomach, main organ involved in digesting food, etc. This is what we're going to be dealing with a lot, are the organ systems. So these are groups of organs, related organs, but that perform a similar function. We will go over the digestive system. That's one of the 5 or 6 that we will go over. We're not going to go over all 11, but we will go over digestive, and we will go over the nervous system. So here's a tiny little digestive system, but all these organs working together help you to digest food and get the nutrients and the energy from it that you need. And last, you have the organism level, which is basically just the whole organisms and all the systems working together to maintain homeostasis. And there's just like a picture form of what we just went over. So you got the smallest level, the chemical level, the atoms. They bond together to form molecules, like this is DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. It is part of cells, and it would be in the nucleus, that's a cellular level. Well, a lot of cells put together to do a certain job, that is the tissue level. Well, a lot of tissues put together that can form the organ level, like in this case, the stomach, and that is smooth muscle tissue in the stomach. Well, the stomach, along with a lot of other organisms like your intestines and the pancreas and the liver, that is the system level for the digestive system. And then all the systems put together help maintain homeostasis for the entire organism. And here are some of the systems that we will go over. You're going to need to know something about all of them, but we're only going to go into great detail on some of them. Integumentary, yes. That's mainly like your skin. Skeletal, yes, we will. Nervous, yes. We will do digestive, and we will do reproductive. Those are the ones we're going to go into in very, very detail. So, even though these are all different systems in your body, they are not independent. They are interdependent. For example, the nervous system transmits electrochemical signals from the brain, spinal cord to the rest of your body to produce responses. Well, that doesn't have anything to do really with the circulatory system, but yes, they do. Because without the circulatory system to deliver blood to your brain and spinal cord, the nervous system won't work. And same thing goes the other way. Without the nervous system to help monitor the circulatory system, it won't work. So even though these are like individual systems, they do work together to maintain an organism's homeostasis. All right, so one of the more important terms for this unit is homeostasis. Earlier I described that as being like a balance. And it's just a condition in which the body's internal environment remains relatively steady despite changes in your external environment. For example, as humans, we like our body to be around 98.5, 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, it's summer right now, and oftentimes it is well above that outside. It gets into the hundreds pretty often around here. Well, what does our body do? Does it just allow our temperature to keep rising until we die? Because if it reached even close to 110 degrees, we would die. We wouldn't even come close to reaching that degrees. Well, we do sweat to release heat, and that brings our body temperature back down. So if the outside air causes our temperature to go up, our body brings it right back down into homeostasis to keep it at roughly 98.5, 98.6 degrees. Now they say that homeostasis is dynamic. That is because it is always in a state of constant flux. It is always making slight adjustments to maintain the body within these narrow limits of stability. So basically, the organs which help to maintain homeostasis, they're always working because the body is always getting moved away from homeostasis, and those organs need to keep working in order to maintain homeostasis. Describe how the two primary systems work to control homeostasis. Well, our two primary systems are the nervous system and the endocrine system. Those are the two systems that basically monitor what's going on in your body, and then they send impulses to correct them. Now, the nervous system is kind of like talking on the telephone. It's instant. Where the endocrine system uses hormones, and I don't know if you guys know what this is, but back in the old days, you used to send mail through the mail. You didn't send like email, but you had to send it through the mail, and it would take 2-3 days to get there. Well, that's kind of like the endocrine system. So it's a little slower reacting than the nervous system. Feedback systems and homeostasis. Okay, we already went over homeostasis. That's where the body tries to remain in balance or to remain stable or unchanged. It likes to keep things at a pretty constant level. It doesn't like body temperature to get too high and too low. It likes things to stay pretty constant. Homeostasis basically works on what's called feedback systems. Feedback. It's basically a lot of cells, organs, structures in your body are constantly monitoring what's going on in your body. They're monitoring everything from temperature, blood sugar levels, blood pH. Hey, is there a disease? Is there any trauma? Have you been hurt some way? Well, the body's always monitoring that. And those are called monitored conditions or controlled conditions. And that's always in response to some sort of stimulus. Now, a stimulus is basically anything that disrupts the balance and causes the body to respond. So a stimulus is anything that causes the body to respond to try to maintain homeostasis. Now, obviously, what are some things that can cause the body to respond to maintain homeostasis? Well, every time you eat food, that causes your blood glucose level to go up. That stimulus, the eating of the food, which causes the blood glucose level to go up, that makes your body respond. It makes your pancreas release insulin, which causes your liver to store glucose in the form of glycogen, and that makes the blood glucose level in your body and your blood go down. So what types of disruptions can affect homeostasis? Well, I went over some of them. Obviously, temperature, blood glucose, blood pH, that's like acid base, trauma, and disease. We've gone over those. Okay, the three basic parts of a feedback system. Remember, feedback systems, that's what maintains homeostasis, a balance in the body. Well, if your body becomes out of balance, if it becomes too high or too low in whatever, pH, glucose, temperature, doesn't matter, the first thing you have to do is you have to notice that. Your brain or your body has to notice that it's getting out of homeostasis. And that's what receptors do. They're constantly monitoring for changes in the body. It is then going to, when it notices that the body is out of homeostasis, it's going to send that to the control center. And this is usually the brain. It is the control center that is going to decide how to best get the body back into homeostasis. Some stimulus is getting us out of it. Our receptors have detected that. They sent that signal to the control center. The control center decides what to do and sends that signal to the effectors. And these are body structures that receive the output from the control center and produces some sort of response that affects a change. So, if blood glucose level became too high and the effectors brought it back down, and the receptors will detect that glucose levels are down, and they will stop sending their signals to the control center, which will stop the signals to the effectors. So that is basically the three parts of a feedback loop. The receptors, which detect some change in the body, sends a signal to the control center, decides what to do, and it sends those signals to an effector, which actually makes the changes in the body. All right, so this is basically what we just went over on the last slide, but just a picture form. So some stimulus causes the body to get out of homeostasis. This is a controlled or monitored condition in the body. Well, that stimulus is detected by receptors. Organs, cells in the body that detect when the body gets out of homeostasis. It then sends what's called the input to the control center, usually in the brain. The control center decides what to do to get the back into homeostasis, and it sends out the output to effectors in the body, which bring about a change or to return the body to homeostasis. That then goes around, is detected by the receptors again. The receptors notice that the body's back in homeostasis, and this causes the receptors to stop sending their nerve impulses to the control center, which stops the signals to the effectors when the body is back in homeostasis. Okay, so two basic types of feedback systems. The first one, and by far the most common, is the negative feedback system. Negative feedback. What you need to know about negative feedback systems is that it reverses a change in the body. It reverses it. So if something in the body is getting too high, it gets out of homeostasis, negative feedback brings it back down. Conversely, if it's getting too low, it will reverse it and bring it back up. That's all negative feedback means. it reverses the change that occurs within the body. If something gets too low, it brings it up. If something gets too high, it brings it down. And just like any feedback loop, the receptors are what detect the changes. It sends information to the control center, usually the brain. It evaluates this input from the receptors. It sends an output, a response to the effectors. And the effectors actually respond to reverse the stimulus or the condition that the body is in. So if the body's getting too low, it brings it up. If it's getting too high, it brings it back down. That is all negative feedback means. And now a little picture to show you a common negative feedback loop in the body, and this is glucose, homeostasis when it comes to blood glucose levels. Well, sometimes it can become too high. After you eat a meal, it can become too high. The pancreas secrete insulin, which causes the liver to store glucose as glycogen, and also your cells as well a little bit. And it causes your cells to increase the metabolism, to increase their use of glucose. And this causes glucose levels to come down. So the original stimulus, the body noticed it was going up. But because it's negative feedback, it caused it to go back down. Well, the opposite could also be true. If you haven't eaten in a long time, your blood glucose levels can become too low. That causes your pancreas again to secrete what's called glucagon. And that causes your liver to convert glycogen into glucose, which is released in the blood, and that causes blood glucose levels to come up. So both of these examples, on top and on bottom, are both negative feedback. So don't think that negative always means make it go down. No. In certain cases, we need blood glucose to go back up because it's too low. That's negative feedback. When it goes down, it makes it go up. And when the body become too high in some sort of stimulus, it makes it come back down. That's negative feedback. And obviously the opposite of the negative feedback systems are the positive feedback systems. These are much less common in the body. Usually if a stimulus starts to go up, the body wants to bring it back down. Where in positive feedback systems, if a stimulus starts to go up, instead of bringing it back down like in negative feedback, it actually makes it go up even higher, which makes it go up even higher. So it is a change in the controlled condition which strengthens. It does not reverse it, but it strengthens the initial response. And here are some examples. I can't think off the top of my head of a fourth example, but here's three. So muscle contractions, you've probably seen it on TV, some medical show or something where, hey, how far apart are your contractions? She'll say like 4 minutes. Well, the next time you ask, it's not going to be 5 minutes. That number is always going to go down. Those contractions are going to increase and increase and increase in frequency. Same thing with blood clotting. I'm going to go over that in a second. Ovulation, another thing. Certain hormones causes estrogen to be released, which causes an increase in these other hormones, which causes an increase in estrogen, which thus causes an increase in those hormones. So it's like an out of control where it keeps going up and up and up until some signal in the body causes it to come back down. But positive feedback just means if it starts going up, positive feedback means it's going to make it go up even higher and higher. It does not bring it back down like negative feedback. All right, so the little example of blood clotting when it comes to positive feedback loops. Well, we've all had a little cut on our finger or wherever. Well, that's basically, we have blood vessels running through our body which carry blood around our body. Well, if we get a cut, that's basically like a little hole in the tissue that surrounds our blood vessels. Well, whenever there's a little cut in the blood vessels, it makes these little proteins called platelets come in. And when they stick in there, when they bind to the wall of the blood vessel, they release chemicals into the blood. They release chemicals. Those chemicals cause more platelets to come in. So the chemicals released by the platelets is going up. That causes more platelets to come in, which release more and more chemicals. That causes the amount of chemicals to go up and up and up. So platelets just start rushing in. It does not take long. because of positive feedback, it causes more and more platelets to rush in and become activated, which will then stop the wound. So once the level of chemicals from the platelets go up, we don't want to bring it down because we got to close that wound. We want the level of chemical to keep going up so more and more platelets come in so that wound can be healed. That is another example of positive feedback, where when it starts going up, it just continues to go up higher and higher and higher, faster and faster and faster. Okay, homeostasis and disease. Basically, you need to know that diseases cause the body to become out of homeostasis, and then your immune system tries to return it back into a balance or homeostasis. Now, these two terms are very, very similar: disorder and disease. A disorder is just an abnormality of the structure or the function of a part of the body of like an organ, where a disease is like an illness that is characterized, is diagnosed by a set of signs and symptoms. Now, diseases can cause disorders. For example, if you have cardiovascular disease, problems with your heart and the vessels, your blood vessels, that can cause you to have an abnormal or irregular heartbeat. The irregular heartbeat would be a disorder which was caused by the disease of cardiovascular disease. All right, the last slide and a couple more terms for you guys. Some diagnostic and medical terms. Symptoms. We usually think of symptoms and signs, they kind of mean the same thing. Well, they're a little different. Symptoms are subjective. So those are changes in the body that cannot be seen or measured. For example, if you go in the doctor's office and you say, I have a headache. Well, I mean, the doctor can feel your head, look at your head, measure your head. It doesn't matter. He or she's not going to be able to determine how bad your head really hurts because you can't tell by looking at it or feeling it. That is subjective. They got to just listen to what you are saying. Or on the other hand, signs, these are changes in the body that are observable and they're measurable. So if you have a rash, unless you painted it on yourself, you can see that. Swelling, if you break your ankle, paralysis, if you have a fever, those are things that can be measured, they can be detected. Where symptoms, you basically just have to listen to the patient's description of what they are feeling. Epidemiology, you've probably heard of epidemics. Well, these are scientists, these are doctors who deal with the transmission of diseases, where they occur, and how they are transmitted from human to human. And if an epidemic did occur, they are the ones that best know how to stop the epidemic, how to treat it, and how to keep it from spreading. Pharmacology, we all heard of pharmacists, I'm guessing, most of us. They deal with the effects and uses of drugs in the treatment of different diseases. And the last thing is a diagnosis, and that's the identification of a disease or disorder upon scientific evaluation through medical history or physical examinations. All right, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you next time.